Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Pharmacy Podcast. I have with me today a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Michelle Perro, and she is a seasoned clinician with over 40 years of experience in pediatrics and integrative medicine. She's dedicated to treating children and families, and being a Yale graduate, she's trained at Mount Sinai Medical School, Bellevue Hospital and NYU, later serving as a director of Pediatric Emergency Department in New York City and spending over a decade at UCSF, Benioff, Oakland Children's Hospital. For the past 25 years, Dr. Perro has championed integrative approaches to health, focusing on the impact of GM foods and pesticides on children's well-being. She has lectured globally and co-authored the acclaimed book, What's Making Our Children Sick? She's the CEO and founder of GMOscience.org, promoting food as medicine and regenerative health education. She also hosts the podcast, The New MDS, and offers parenting resources through her website. And she's going to have her upcoming book, Making Our Children Well, released next year. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. So Michelle, it seems like we are local. I don't know if you're still in New York, but I'm in Brooklyn, New York now, and I've actually been at Bellevue and some other of the places you mentioned as part of my rotations in pharmacy school. So it's nice to meet a fellow person that walked a similar road. And also, I think what you're focusing on with GMO is fascinating because not a lot of things are yet 100% known. There's still a lot of gray areas and controversy around this. And I think our children are our future, right? I have 2 kids, so it's so important to me to understand what I'm feeding them, how can I support their health. So I'm curious, what made you go down this path and have these 2 key areas of interest?
Thank you. Yes. So I am the first third of my life was spent in New York. I'm from Manhattan. My kids are my son and my beautiful daughter-in-law now live in Queens. But I transitioned to Northern California, and I've been here the second chapter, and the last chapter, well, who knows where the wind blows. So how I got here, so pediatric emergency medicine was my passion, but I pivoted into holistic health through force of nature. I had a son with health challenges, and he doesn't mind me sharing this. And I had a serendipitous encounter with an MD homeopath who was wonderful, still practicing. Her name is Dr. Ikenze. She's local here too. And through the use of homeopathy, one of my favorite tools in my tool chest, he got better. And, frankly, Marina, I was outraged because I was trained in traditional Mount Sinai Medical School, a year of pharmacy. We both can relate to that. 2 hours of nutrition. I've had to catch up a little bit. I've spent hours, I'd say weeks, I say months studying nutrition. If you put it all together, I literally had to become a naturopathic doctor. I pivoted to integrative health, and I created an integrative urgent care in my community in early 2000, let's say 25 years ago. But then what happened is I started seeing an uptick in gut disorders and autism in children. And I said, oh, whoa, stop. So kids were coming in for chronic abdominal pain, chronic ear infections, new onset of autism. And this was in urgent care, and the pediatricians weren't addressing it. So I had to learn root cause medicine. I was a homeopath, but I didn't really understand naturopathy. So I had to retrain myself yet again, expanding the toolbox. And then I learned about GMOs and pesticides from my friend and colleague, Jeffrey Smith, who runs the Institute for Responsible Technology. And I read his book, Seeds of Deception. When I read his book and the work of Dr. Arpad Pusti, who was the first scientist to study GMOs and the effects of GMOs without pesticides, because remember, you don't eat a GMO alone. You eat it with associated glyphosate-based herbicides. They are Roundup ready. And when I saw his work on rats, I was shocked, horrified, crazed, outraged, pick the adjective, and pivoted yet again to the work I'm now doing, starting the nonprofit. We're a 501c3, writing letters, getting involved with political campaigns. And in the past few years, I've been doing testing of infant formula, Girl Scout cookies, school lunches with other advocacy groups. So that is the thumbnail approach of 43 years in the art of medicine. But the bottom line is the care of children and families. And I say families because children don't care for themselves. It's about educating parents, empowering parents to take back their children's health, regain the terrain, switching from pharma to farm. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If a child needs a pharmaceutical, I'm the first to say absolutely. But we have so many things we can offer families, starting in the kitchen. So I say, la cocina es tu medicina, which means the kitchen is your medicine. So that's sort of the umbrella of how I now approach health.
Yeah, beautiful. So you mentioned that you started in emergency pediatric care. So how did like that experience shape your desire to practice a more preventative and public health and informed approach?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I love emergency care and I love doing acute care. My brain works that way. But I never liked all the interventions we were doing. And every opportunity I had with families, I was already saying, you know, this kid with asthma, why don't you try taking him off of dairy? And I was using garlic and mullein oil for kids, you know, chronic ear infections. And I was having families spray with, you know, silver or iodine for their strep throats, in addition to doing all the things that we had to follow. So I never stopped loving the acute care. And then once I learned about homeopathy, I started doing acute care homeopathics. So sprained ankles got arnica, and sore throats may have gotten heparin sulfuris, and toothaches. You know, I was starting to do all that I can quickly give remedies, and I was getting amazing results. So then I went and studied in India, in Mumbai, at a homeopathic school. Me and 60 little girls, they were so young, and 21-year-old Indian women, mostly all women in these homeopathic schools. Homeopathy is huge in India. And I just really immersed myself in the art and practice, and then learned about homotoxicology. It's called German biologic medicine, and expanded. But I didn't need to throw out my emergency background. It was an opportunity to expand. Because yes, we wanted, the past 25 years, I've dealt with chronic diseases in children, autism, Lyme, ADHD, PANDAS, PANS, you name it. I became a chronically ill care specialist. And the last years of my practice, because I do much less now, was literally all Lyme and co-infections. And I actually have a Lyme clinic now too, because I saw so much. I digress. But I see as an opportunity to keep learning and offering tools, because our kids, since I wrote the first book in 2017, are sicker. We can go into that, Marina, if you want, why our kids are even sicker. But we have, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, we have a chronic disease emergency of our children. And I mean, I can give you statistics till your hair turns gray. You could see mine has already, of what is happening to our kids. We have so much data. It's not like we don't have the science. I can give you data on autism, ADHD, infertility, eczema, you name it, obesity, metabolic disorders, and how everything is skyrocketed, particularly autoimmunity and cancer, up in children. Unheard of 20 years ago. Unheard of. Autism in California now, where I reside, 1 in 22 children. When I was at Bellevue as a young buck, 1 in 10,000. That's my career span. So if that's the real pandemic, you can forget COVID. The real pandemic is neurodevelopmental diseases in our children, because our kids are not functioning well. And if parents don't believe me, I say, no worries. You shouldn't believe what I say. Go to your child's school and talk to their teacher. Teachers are running IEPs all day long now. It's shocking. So I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. But so that was sort of not necessarily a transition. I like to think of it as an expansion.
They are all interconnected. They're all related, right? Like all the metabolic and inflammatory dysfunction is leading into infertility. And even if people are fortunate enough to have kids, they may have neurocognitive and neurodevelopmental, also autoimmune or inflammatory type of conditions. And then it's kind of like a loop, right? A loop system, one problem contributes to the next. And so I would love for you to talk on the topic of why you feel like there is such a prevalence and a rise in these childhood diseases and how it's connected to these other disease states that we were mentioning. And then maybe if you can talk about where the types of medicine that you're an expert in, maybe where they all shine.
Absolutely. So what's driving chronic disease? Let's talk about it. Your kid gets stung by a bee. Okay. That's sort of an acute event. But the chronic disease epidemic is driven by environmental toxicants. And I don't say toxins. Toxins are organic. Toxicants are inorganic, meaning those are chemicals. The leading drivers of those chemical toxicants making our children sick are pesticides, toxic metals, or you can say heavy metals, but not all toxic metals are heavy. So I just say toxic metals, plastics, parabens, phthalates, and solvents. And of course, things like, from air pollution, the cookware, PFAS, in our food. What's driving that? And the two biggest I focus on, because they work negatively synergistically, which means that when you put multiple toxicants together, their effects are worse. If you have one heavy metal, let's say lead, but then you have two, lead and mercury, or you have three, like what we found in infant formula, the synergism of the negative effects are exponentially increased. And then if you add in things like pesticides, the main one I focused on is glyphosate, which is the main ingredient in Roundup. And that's the only reason why we're eating more Roundup is because of GMO crops. And I'll get to that in a second. So we have a multiplier effect. Studies usually address one. They on purpose don't look at the multiple toxicities of what our kids look like. As you may recall, in 2010, I believe, Environmental Working Group did a study of umbilical cords for environmental toxicants, and they found an average of 287 chemicals. Babies are born pre-polluted. What did we do about that? Now, here we are years later, and we have a MAHA movement. I call it MOCA, Make Our Children Healthy Again. MAHA's great, but I'm really focusing on kids. Adults, yeah, you're okay, but I prefer to work with children. That's just me, and animals and plants. But adults, you're on your own. No, I joke a lot because I'm a New Yorker, Marina. But let's get back to GMOs. So GMOs were released on the planet in 1998. And so the only reason why, when you eat a genetically modified food, corn, soy, canola, alfalfa, that's what our animals eat, papayas from Hawaii, zucchini, now apples and potatoes are GMO, that the only reason why that those were devised were, so when you spray glyphosate-based herbicides, Roundup, those crops don't die. That's it. They don't increase yield. They use more water. The nutrient density of GMO foods is much lower than their organically regenerative grown counterparts. They are not equivalent. So this idea of equivalency is outdated. It's inaccurate. It's wrong. So if you take GMO corn and organic regenerative corn, the nutrients will be markedly lower in the GMO corn. Most of our children are eating GMOs all day long because it's in corn, soy, things our kids eat. They've just introduced GMO wheat, and they use these pesticides as crop desiccants before us to dry them down. Highest amounts wheat, oats, and legumes. So if a child's a vegetarian, they're getting massive amounts of glyphosate-based herbicides unless they eat organic. So what's happened is weeds, super smart, super resistant. 75% of the weeds in the US are now resistant to those glyphosate-based herbicides. So Monsanto, now Bayer, they were purchased by Bayer Pharmaceuticals in 2018. I know you're familiar with Bayer. They have to make more aggressive pesticides and stack these genetic traits because of weed resistance. And they've come out with even worse pesticides, 2,4-D, dicamba, even more toxic, as if the original one wasn't bad enough. Now, so that has happened. So our kids are eating more of it. And so the EPA, in all their wisdom, instead of getting rid of it or lowering it or removing the desiccants, they raise the acceptable levels of glyphosate. They keep raising it. More and more is acceptable. We're much higher than in Europe. People say all the time, I traveled to Italy or France and I could eat the weed, I can eat the food. That's because they are much better regulated. Now they're fighting GMOs too right now. I'm going to be speaking to the New Zealand Parliament in a few weeks because they want to let GE food, into genetically engineered is synonymous with GMOs, into their country. So what's the problem in addition to nutrient density is those genetically modified organisms that have been mucked around the lab swap genes with the bacteria in your microbiome. So your own microbes that run your immune function, detoxification, vitamin production, become genetically modified. The health impact of that is not known, not studied. There are very few human studies looking at GMOs. I think maybe 3 in 25 years. That is unheard of. And the original study was on rats, which showed harm from GMOs. When that researcher published his results in 1998, Dr. Arpad Pusti, 2 days later, he was fired from his institute called the Rowan Institute. It's in Scotland. And he was in a movie later called Scientists Under Attack. So scientists who have showed harm have been vilified, careers damaged, thrown out of their institutions. So people are not getting the information. And we are being run by industry, including universities. So research has been taken over by big pharma, big ag, big tele, just big. And so we're not getting good science, we're getting biased science. So people say the science doesn't show that. I said, my patient showed it. I've studied thousands of patients, changed their diets. They've gotten better. Now that was a long soliloquy, but it's just a lot of information for your audience to process.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you a controversial question, if I may. People say, you know, and what you mentioned about the doctor being fired just kind of made me remember that there was a doctor who showed a link between vaccines and leaky gut and then autism. And so there's lots of documentaries and there's lots of talks about vaccines now contributing to things like autism. And now you're saying like GMOs and pesticides, they definitely contribute. So on like a scale, if you will, like what are all the things that are contributing and what can we do about it in order to protect our children?
Absolutely. So number one, any protection of our children has to really begin preconception. So parents need to start actually before the kid is born, ideally, but there is never a missed opportunity to clean up. You have to clean up your diet and your environment. If parents don't change their diet, it's lost. Because what moms don't know is when they're pregnant, whatever they're eating, the fetus, then baby, will develop the taste for that food. So for example, there's research that shows moms who drank alcohol during pregnancy, not recommended. Their infants preferred alcohol. If moms ate spicy food, their infants preferred spicy. They develop the same taste that moms are exposed to. That relationship between mom and the baby is intense and it never ends because we swap fetal cells with the infant. We're in touch with our children at all times. My kids live 3,000 miles away and something's wrong. I'm like, something's wrong with my kid. It's that witchy stuff. Okay. So the first thing what is driving autism is the toxic load has been overreached. The plumbing is clogged. The sink is overflowing. Children do not detoxify as well as adults. The first line of detoxification is a microbiome. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. It's in everything you're eating if it's not organic. So it wipes out your beneficial bacteria like bifidobacterium, lactobacilli, and promotes toxic bacteria, or more pathogenic, I should say, like Clostridial species and Salmonella. That's what glyphosate is. Plenty of data out of Germany, 2013, from the veterinarian research, Dr. Monica Kruger. Okay, so you have to switch to organic regenerative food, and parents need to eat at home. We spend 46% of our income eating out. I can tell you the stuff we're eating out, eating high quality restaurants, is not organic. Using seed oils, canola, the worst. The absolute worst. So we're going takeout because moms are working, dads are working, no one's in the kitchen. That has to stop. Everyone needs to get back in the kitchen and eat whole foods. We have to reverse this pattern of convenience cooking or convenience eating back to whole food cooking, teaching children how to cook. They need to be modeling that behavior from prenatally. And I'm inviting every parent. This is not just to moms. This is to mom and dad. This is not a mom's call. As a matter of fact, I have a chapter in our first book called Warrior Moms. I would change that now in 2025 to Warrior Parents. I want every dad, every two moms, two dads, two grandparents, who's ever raising those children, four grandparents, to step into the equation. Everyone steps in. And it doesn't have to be a soul journey. Families can gather for meals, share cooking. You cook on Mondays, your neighbor cooks on Wednesdays, that kind of thing. So we have to lower the toxic load, get rid of the pesticides. GMOs must be banned. They have to be eliminated today. That's my call out to Secretary Kennedy, is they must stop. They're not regulated. It's a GMO free for all out there. And there are more, sophisticated genetic modifications now called CRISPR, but hold on a second. We have to get rid of the pesticides, and maybe we have to fade them out because farmers depend on them. And the farm bills need to support organic farmers, organic regenerative farmers. Soil needs to be rehabilitated, just like our children's guts. Additionally, all the environmental toxicants have to be looked at in our children's lives. Personal care products, cleaning products, water filters, what you put in your kids' school lunch. The brilliant study Moms Across America did, which we went to DC on it, showed 100% of the meals contain heavy metals, and 93% of them contain glyphosate-based herbicides. And a significant number contain veterinarian pharmaceuticals, including chicken contraceptives, in their school lunches. The nutrient levels were abysmal. Children might as well be eating cardboard. And that was 43 school lunches across America tested. And that's and some children are eating 1, 2, or 3 meals a day at school, and those are the only meals they're getting. And then we ask, why can't our kids focus? They have no magnesium, they have no zinc, they have no calcium, they have no vitamin B12, B3, B9. You need all those nutrients to run brain function. And if kids aren't receiving them, they will not function. They will not sleep. Their immune systems are challenged. They don't have enough zinc. They can't relax. They don't have enough magnesium. And so they are at risk. So we have to sort of clean up the terrain. I call it regain the terrain, one of my tenets of my stool.
I love that. And what do you say to people that may be skeptical of the link between GMOs and pesticides and harm to children, and people who say like, oh, well, I ate this, 40, 50 years ago and I turned out fine. Or, GMOs are supposed to be more resilient, and many crops are GMO just like naturally. They become more resistant over time and their genetics change. So this is the same thing, and trust the science and all this kind of stuff.
So what I say to families, I say, well, how is your child doing? Let's say that theory is correct. I'm fine. I eat it. I have no problems. I say, how is your kid? My kid doesn't have any health challenges. I said, okay, great. I said, well, how are they doing in school? Let's say it's a school-age child, primary school. They'll say, oh, he has an IEP for reading and math. Okay. I said, how's his sleep? Oh, he wakes up a lot. Any tummy troubles? No. Okay, how's his poop? He poops once or twice a week. Okay. Any problem with the poop? Yeah, it's usually hard. Skin, how's his skin? How's their skin? Well, he's got some rashes on his upper extremities over here, and he does complain of tummy aches and itchy skin a lot. Okay. So what some families do is they're in denial that their kids are okay, but they're not. Sick is the new normal. As one little girl told me, I'll never forget this line, a little primary school girl, maybe 3rd grade. She had severe environmental allergies, horrific. And we were working with it to try and clear them by working on her gut, because eczema, allergies, and asthma all stem from the gut. And she said, but Dr. Perro, everybody has allergies. It was so common. Everyone she knew had allergies, that is the normal. So we have to say no. And allergies are not normal. Asthma is not normal. Chronic abdominal pain is not normal. Kids should be pooping 1, 2, 3 times a day. They don't get enough fiber in their diets. So families are normalizing illness, and their pediatricians, pardon me, are supporting this. That, oh, just give some Zyrtec. Give some Benadryl. Oh, it's fine. Just a little allergy. No, it's not an allergy. It's a disruption of T helper 1 and 2 cells in their gut. likely from chronic pesticides, which is altering their immune function. And if we don't change this now, they're going to have autoimmune disease in their second or third decade. A lot of diseases take a longer time to develop, like autoimmunity and like cancer. So you're setting them up for later on chronic diseases. If you look at children, many of them are tired, they're doughy, their hair quality is not good, they have dark circles under their eyes, their tongues are coated and cracked, and they have this kind of roundness to their chest and scrawny extremities, and or they may be obese or overweight. 1 in 3 to 1 in 5 kids is obesity. Obesity is not benign. It's linked to later developing cardiovascular disease, autoimmunity, and cancer, not to mention esteem issues and being able to participate in gym or swimming or whatever physical activity. So these diseases are not benign, and they affect our children's psyches, by the way. So there has to be a reality check. Now, the idea is not to shame parents. No. That is not what we're doing. It's an educational process, and it's a journey. It's not a goal to create perfection. It's an opportunity to make changes along the way. Some parents will dump their refrigerator overnight, and some people could take 6 months. That's okay. Every step of change is a step towards better health. So what I tell families, I said, don't believe me. You be your N of 4. Let's say you have 4 people in your household, 2 children. Switch to organic. Give it 4 weeks. It takes 4 weeks to clear those antibodies to food. Give it 4 weeks. Come back to me in 4 weeks, 1 month. Everyone does it. You don't give your little Susie kale salad and you and dad are going out to get pizza. No. Everyone follows a clean, organic, regenerative diet. See me in 4 weeks. If we don't see improvement in members of your family, I will return your money. That has never happened. As a matter of fact, one kid with autism I'm working on, several years ago, the mom had severe asthma. They went organic. I took the kid off gluten and dairy because he had autism. Autistic kids don't do well with gluten and dairy, so that's another thing. But the mom stopped gluten and dairy because she's changing the household food. And 3 days later, her asthma went away. She hadn't needed an inhaler after that. She said, yeah, my son's doing somewhat better, but she goes, my asthma cleared. She had dairy-induced asthma. Yeah, she was severely allergic to dairy. No one ever told her that. And it manifested as asthma. So that is what I say, that you be the experiment in your family. And when I have parents, because I do a lot on Zoom now, send me pictures of your pantry, your spice rack, and your alcohol. Some parents will have a beer or a glass of wine, and it's not organic. All beers, all wines are contaminated with pesticides. 19 German beers, 19 tested positive for glyphosate-based herbicides. So much so in the US that they couldn't even grow beer for a while because the yeast would not grow. A lot of yeast is genetically modified, by the way. You'll see it as MSG on food labels, and that MSG is often from genetically modified yeast. Just saying. So this is the thinking that we're trying to adopt that has to be taught to our families. We're not trained to do this in med school, so to expect this from your pediatrician who's not trained in this is unreasonable. I'm also a pediatrician, are trained in a way of thinking, and to expect our pediatrician to know this after 2 hours of nutrition is not going to happen unless they do what I did. So you have to sort of say, this is what I'll get from my pediatrician, and this is what I'll get from my integrative team.
Yeah, I mean, you're dropping so much wisdom. I don't even know what to comment on right now. But I will say I was at my pediatrician's earlier this week with my daughter who got sick, and I saw they had this poster for a new monoclonal antibody injection for kids' allergies. It's newly approved. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like they're celebrating like this newly approved medication for allergies when the whole cause of allergies is what you've been explaining throughout this entire episode. And it really just showed me, again, highlighted maybe for me, that this is such a huge systemic issue that healthcare is not getting trained on this. We're not really getting trained in the root causes of things. And our food policies and our pharma policies are driving the same dynamic, which is an imbalance and disease rising and health declining. And we can really clearly see it in our younger population. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine effect, right? And it's really, really terrifying, to be honest with you, as a parent. So, and even like all the caveats that you were talking about, where, okay, even if you do eat wholesome food at home, when you're eating out, you can't really read food labels, right? Like, you don't know what they're serving you in the kitchen over there, how they're refrying their oils that may be seed oils. And then again, there's a lot of like hype about what are chemicals, what are seed oils. Is processed food really bad for you? Like all this marketing and social media conversation that can get really, really confusing. So I really appreciate you kind of breaking it down and making it sort of simple, because I hear also a lot of people that are into, let's say, functional medicine, and, you know, they require all these tests to be done in order to treat a person. And I think, you know, what you're saying is, start simple, right? Like just clean up what you can without even seeing the test, because this is going to be good for you and it might clear things up automatically, right?
100%.
And
yes.
Yeah. And I'm curious, could you give us some more advice about how not to be just paralyzed with all this information and to become advocates, even though schools, aren't providing the best quality food, doctors don't have the best information. Like, what do we do as parents and as advocates for our kids?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a big believer in righteous anger. So I've had a lot of parents in my office, and I am downloading some really, maybe sometimes not great news, right? And parents, moms, I see mostly moms, dads, I don't know where you are, but it's a lot of women in the office, women, right? Health and education. Anyway, and there's always a box of tissues nearby. Crying, let's get it out of our system. Crying, clearing those tear ducts is super healthy. Once we finish with that, I tell moms, okay, boo-hoo, get it out of your system. Let's cry it out together. And then we get pissed off, because righteous anger is powerful. And now we become advocates for our children in community. Whatever your community is, your school, your preschool, your church, your whatever your community looks like, your online community, do it together. And small baby steps. The first place to start is your kitchen. I don't recommend supplements if people have not changed their food. You must shop organic. And people said, I don't know how to cook. And what my daughter told me when I was learning how to ferment, make sauerkraut, super healthy for kids years ago. My own kid who worked on a farm, like literally out of high school, said, Mom, watch YouTube. Like, come on, get with it. I said, oh, okay. All right, honey. Watch YouTube. It was so simple. So there are so many great little 15-minute videos where it'd say, I don't have time, on your way to go pick up your kid, or you walk to school, you drive to school, or whatever you're doing. Listen to the podcast. Like you, Marina, plenty of podcasts out there. How to make a salad, how to make healthy foods, how to do a veggie stir fry, how to make a lunchbox, a healthy lunchbox for your child. So baby steps. So one, in community. Well, no, let's go back. Righteous anger. 2, in community. Do it with other parents. Much easier as a group. 3, start educating yourself, however that looks for you. I find a lot of younger parents now are listening to podcasts on the way to this or the way to that. Podcasts are great. However you want to do it. You must shop organic, whether that's Costco, Trader Joe's, Sprouts, online, whole paycheck, etc. Organic. If it's expensive, yes, I know. Buy in bulk and prepare it. Those beans, bulky beans, easy to cook, super healthy. Your microbes love beans. They love them. And you can learn. Kids love a bean taco. Kids love tacos. That was one of my kid go-to. So you do that. So you start to get in the kitchen. Get the kids in the kitchen. They sell children's knives. Teach your children how to cut. Boys love knives. Get them in there chopping and show them how to do it. And with my own kids, this is my one big regret. I didn't get them in the kitchen early because I didn't want to mess. That is over. If I had to do it now, this was a long time ago, I would have those kids making a mess in my clean kitchen. And you clean it up. So what? Get them in there, make a mess, teach them how to cook. And that's how we start. And then make it community-based. So have people come over to your house, or if you don't have a small apartment, meet in the park when the weather's nice and do picnics. Don't go out for meals. Go to the picnic and everybody shares a meal. Am I saying boycott restaurants? Tell the restaurants you want to see organic, regenerative food on their menu, and get rid of the kids' menu. Kids don't need mac and cheese and chicken fingers and French fries. None of that is healthy. Get real food like they do in France. As a matter of fact, I'll share one story. I did a whole thing on school lunches around the world. And the French children had to eat American school lunches. And so American kids ate theirs and French kids ate our kids. And they put a typical tray wrapped in plastic of chicken nuggets and some applesauce and God knows what else, and microwaved in plastic. And the French kids were like, qu'est-ce que c'est, and wouldn't eat it. The French children got home-cooked meals with a cheese course at the end. That's the difference. So I tell parents, embrace the challenge. And when you're anxious about it or fearful, talk to your friends. And if you have kids in primary school and you're the soccer mom, which I was, we were all soccer moms out here in California, don't bring cupcakes we bring snacks after soccer game. Bring tangerines. Cut some oranges, cut some apple slices with some cinnamon on it. Bring fruits and veggies. Bring veggies with organic hummus. So start changing the mindset of what's culturally acceptable, and you be the parent to make the shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And this reminded me of that documentary, Super Size Me. And I remember the uproar in New York when I think it was Bloomberg who banned the super size sodas. And there was such a huge uproar. And I was, obviously celebrating, first of all, you shouldn't be having sodas at all, and definitely not in those large sizes. And there's just so many policies that don't make sense, including school lunches, that sometimes you just don't know where to start. And so I think, again, what you're saying is start with yourself, start with your own home, educate your community after you educate yourself, or learn together with like-minded people and from like-minded people. And then maybe find an integrative healthcare team that is educated and that will also be teaching you, especially if there is already a problem that you need help with. So I think all of those are great tips. And then any other tips to go bigger and influence, your schools or other policies that are out there?
So a lot of parents are not going to be doing what I did. Last year, we tested 40 infant formulas for toxic metals. Every one of them was positive for lead and aluminum. We just finished and published a study about Girl Scout cookies to hope the Girl Scouts would join with us. We tested 25 cookies. All were positive for toxic metals and glyphosate and AMPA, their toxic byproduct. You're probably not going to be doing that. You're not going to be out there doing that, and that's okay. If you start with your home, start local, and go global. So the next stop would be your school PTA. And you go in there, it's what can we do to improve school events? Not selling cupcakes, can we sell healthy snacks? So showing up at schools, whether it's a private or public school, there are PTAs, parent-teacher associations. Join and voice your concern about that. And as I mentioned about the soccer game, use those opportunities. If you're hosting the kid's birthday party, does it always have to be pizza and cupcakes? Who said that? We hosted my daughter's prom night here, and I made black lentils and rice with a huge salad, and those kids sucked it down. There were no cupcakes. There were no chips and salsa. I made all real food, and those kids sucked it all down. My kids' graduation, I was one of the moms who volunteered to bring dessert. Every mom brought dye-colored cookies with those synthetic dyes are neurotoxicants. I brought organic strawberries dipped in organic chocolate that I froze. It was the first thing to go off the dessert tray, off the dessert table. So to say the kids don't want it is inaccurate. So you become that parent, you make the change, read up how to do it, watch YouTubes, talk to the other moms. So could the school. So your kid's school is huge. Can you go bigger if you live in a community like I do, a small town, town councils? We have a monthly meeting where we can show up and voice our opinions about what's going on in your town. So you can show up there. And you're going to see action petitions come around from all my favorite organizations: Moms Across America, Organic Consumers Association, GMO Free USA, EWG, Environmental Working Group, Made Safe, Amy Ziff is in Brooklyn. All these organizations are promoting organics, right? Let's Safe Mama, my new friend. So many. Sign up for their newsletters, sign their petitions. So right now, I am presently working on a bill. We have a food safety bill, baby food safety bill here in California. And at last minute, they took off infant formula, where companies had to identify toxic metals in the baby food products. And I'm working on to introduce to our local legislators to put infant formula back on the bill, AB 899. So maybe you can do that and go to your legislation. There's no reason why you can't. I have no special training in legislation. I am not a lawyer. I don't even like lawyers. So sorry, lawyers. I mean, physicians and lawyers, it's a touchy situation. So, but there I am talking to legislators on how we can protect our children at the legislative action level. And that would be the highest goal. So start subscribing to our newsletters, gmoscience.org. That's mine. You'll get infrequent emails. You can look and see what I'm doing in terms of changing the conversation. And Margaret Mead said it, I can't take credit, is don't underestimate what one person can do.
I love that. Those are such good and practical tips, Michelle. And as a physician, I'd love for you to also speak to other healthcare providers that may be in the audience that maybe are also worried about their license and legalities when they may be open to more holistic approaches, but maybe they're in a practice where it's allopathic, like you were working in the emergency care settings, and there's specific protocols that they need to follow. What would your advice be to them?
So yeah, there is pressure. There's something called clinical practice guidelines, and you're supposed to be following a guideline. And what you can do is you just have to justify what you do. So if your kid is having some issues, chronic constipation, and the protocol would say give Miralax, a polyethylene glycol, one of the worst things you can give a kid. My goal in life was to get kids off Miralax. I saw so many in urgent care on it for years. The recommendation is 2 weeks. Okay, so not a big fan. So I would say to the mom, I would say, oh, okay, Mom, Marina, you can continue this Miralax polyethylene glycol. That's what it is. Or we can start increasing some fiber and water intake in your child's diet. And I actually have a homeopathic remedy. Homeopathy is not illegal. It's over the counter. You can go to the store and buy it. And I can give your child a homeopathic remedy. With that, do you have a preference? And most moms, almost all, said to me, oh yeah, what do I do with the fiber, water, and homeopathic remedy, which is, safe? I'd say, okay. And in my chart note, I'd say recommended either pharmaceutical approach, Miralax, or dietary change and homeopathics, and parents decided to go this option. We'll follow up in 4 weeks. I offered to you, I say, I have a pharmaceutical approach. It's giving steroids, it's giving albuterol, it's giving Miralax, or I could also do this. Do you have a preference? Maybe some parents want the pharmaceutical approach. I say, okay, here you go. Here's your script. But if you ever decide to want other options, let me know. I don't force parents to make changes. Your kid, you're in charge. I'm just going to tell you the risk benefits. It's called informed consent.
Amazing. And then circling back to our earlier conversation about your expertise in allopathic, emergency care, pediatrics, homeopathy, and naturopathy, where do you find each of these shines, and where can we implement each of these?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan for pharmaceutical intervention for acutes. Like, let's say, for children are not having a heart attack, although that has changed. But let's say a broken leg and the kid breaks their femur. They need morphine. Oh, please give them some morphine. Okay, please. But I'm also giving bone healing remedies. And if they're going to the operating, I'm giving them arnica, and I'm doing other things. I'm giving them extra vitamin C and vitamin D for postoperative stress. So there are ways I can even boost them, even though they need the morphine for the pain on the way to the operating room. So that's like pharma for acute situations. Awesome. A kid has a pneumonia and needs an antibiotic. Please, we're going to give them some amoxicillin or azithromycin. But I'm also giving probiotics to offset the antibiotic. I'm also giving vitamin C and vitamin D, maybe some elderberry to boost their immune function. And for sure, bone broth soup, right? Glycine, collagen, super healthy. Okay, so that's the acute. So where would I might find homeopathics is for everything. In the book I've coming out, it's acute and chronic. And there's ways to do it. The acute are easier for acute treatment, arnica for sprained ankles, or you have a rash, you're getting the sulfur, or bee sting is apis. The chronic requires working with a homeopath or a naturopath. Naturopathic medicine, I use the stool of nutraceuticals, herbals, and homeopathics in my approaches to dealing with children. So it's a integrative approach to holistic care, and I extract if a child might need some herbs, maybe manipulatives. We'll get to manipulatives in a minute. So it's a holistic approach using all the tools in the toolbox, why I love naturopathy or naturopathic medicine. But last and not least, and it's not last, do not forget manipulative medicines, and that includes chiropractic care, osteopathic care, acupuncture or acupressure, and the other various modalities, whether it's Feldenkrais, and there are so many, that I send almost all children for osteopathic manipulation at some point in our treatment, and it can really realign systems. So I am such a fan of manipulative medicine, and you can find a practitioner who works with children. Children are not mini adults. Their physiology is different. Their musculoskeletal system is different. So find somebody with good hands on children. Babies in France, after babies are born, the craniosacral practitioner or osteopath goes around and quickly adjusts all the babies from a vaginal birth. And it's subtle, it's gentle. It's not a crackerback. It's just these gentle shifts to get babies realigned after birth. It's beautiful. So these are the types of tools you can extract from different modalities. Is one better than the other? It's individualized medicine. The base, you heard me preach it for this whole show, is nutrition. But it really depends on what your child is dealing with and what might be the best approach for you. Some parents like traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture and acupressure. Right on. Fabulous. Some parents would prefer herbs, herbal medicine. Absolutely, 100%. So, we can work with families depending on what your leanings on. If you're a vegetarian and you say, I'd rather give my kid herbal medicine, 100, yes, we can work with that. So we work within your cultural framework and what is okay for parents, because you are still the parents. So we work within that. And if there's something I feel strongly about would help your child, I might say, I respect your position, but there is really something out of your comfort zone that would really help your child. Here's some reading. Consider it. Let me know what you think. No pressure. No, you get this shot or you're out of my office. Those are mandates. We don't do that. You're in charge. The government and the clinic is not in charge of your child.
I love that, Michelle. And I think it just solidifies your empowerment message, right? That you get to have the informed consent only when you have the information. And a lot of times we just call it informed consent, but there has been not much information exchange, or, parents have questions and the doctor doesn't have time to answer them, or there's controversial questions. And so we really need to do the research and decide what's right for your individual child or the individual parent. And so I just think you're such a wonderful wealth of information, and I could keep you talking here for hours. Maybe we'll do another episode on Lyme or something like that. But yeah, I really appreciate your perspective, and I would love to do a rapid fire round of questions with you if you still have a minute or so.
No, I still have a minute. Sure, let's do it, and let's give your listeners and your attendees, useful, practical pragmatics.
Love it. Okay, so what's the number one thing you recommend for somebody to improve their quality of life right now?
If I had to recommend one thing that would improve your quality of life and that would help you is, I'd say, increase the fiber in your diet. Americans are super low. Beans are your friend. And homemade beans, soaked beans are the best. So fiber. And that will support your microbiome, which will support your gut, which supports your gut-brain axis. So fiber and fluid. You can't eat fiber without drinking more filtered water. I do recommend 1+ filtered water. I do recommend at least a carbon filter. Get the system you can afford to get anything in the water supply. I'm not a fan of fluoride in the children's water, so a filter, and see if you can at least start with that.
Love it. Okay, question 2, and maybe this is already part of question 1 that you answered. What is your personal favorite thing to cook for your kids, or used to be anyway?
Yeah, I had 2 favorites. And my kids are all grown and married, etc. One with tacos. I would do organic corn tortillas, and I would do a meat stir fry, whatever meat I wanted. Meat was not the main part, with some beans, rice, some organic cheese that I would shred up on my little Salad Masters a cheese shredder, and with some shredded lettuce, tomato. They loved it. And they make their own tacos if they're old enough, 7 or 8 or 9-year-old. And so you have taco night. That was one. Number 2 would be the blender. The blender is your friend. So I would start with just coconut milk and pineapple and ice, and then I would slowly add those greens in there, and especially cilantro. That cilantro goes in your tacos too, because cilantro is a great detoxifier. So you could start adding clean chlorella. You got cilantro, celery, zucchini. Those aren't very strong tasting veggies. Slowly into your child's smoothie. Pineapple and coconut have really strong flavors. The medium chain triglycerides in coconut, great for your baby's brain, good brain food. And pineapple has bromelain. It's an enzyme that's really good for digestive health, amongst other things. So whole foods, get that in the blender. You can get a Vitamix, you can get a bullet, you can get a regular blender. And I leave the fiber. I don't juice it. I leave the fiber in the drink. You can make it into popsicles. And if your kid is sick, put ice in it and have them sip a cold drink, because when kids are sick, they tend to like cold.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I need to try that blended recipe. And then lastly, I'd love for you to talk about maybe a fun hobby that you have, or fun facts that maybe many people don't know about you.
Oh, yeah. So 13 years ago, I took up dance. And I became a ballroom dancer. And I'm not a dancer as a child. I played sports. I was never a dancer. And I took it up. It's a long story how I got there. And I dance regularly now. And it was a life changer for me, learning to dance. And so dancing, even though I've played competitive sports, dancing is not competitive. Although I've done dance competitions, I had to try it. So teaching your children how to dance, and you dancing with your children, playing music while you're cooking and dancing together, is freeing. It's a freeing thing. It allows kids to express themselves and be in their bodies without competition. This is not tennis. This is not soccer. There's nobody wins and loses when you're dancing. So I wish I danced more when my kids were little, but both my kids can dance. I'm very proud about that. But it's just a beautiful expression of joy. And so I say every community center has like dance classes, whether it's salsa, a ballroom, or a country two-step. Country two-step is very easy. People love country music. Give it a try.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree as a fellow dancer, and I call it medicine for the mind, body, and spirit. I think it's just a great thing. In addition to like high nutrient food, it's a great remedy. And so Michelle, please tell our listeners where they can learn more and follow your work and get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I have a 501c3. It's called gmoscience.org, because I've been battling GMOs now since 2006. So please, I have an Instagram, GMO Science, on X. I don't really go to the other on X rather. I don't do Insta so much, or LinkedIn. I can only handle one social media because there's so many hours in the day. And I do run a Lyme clinic, and I also teach for Salad Masters, which is a non-toxic cookware, which is non-toxic in terms of metals. So super great. So I do all those things, but gmoscience.org, if you want to reach out to me. If you email me, I will answer. I did a podcast for Dr. McCullough 2 years ago during COVID. right at the end of COVID, and I got 600 requests for help from that podcast on my website. I went, oh my God. It took me 3 months, but I answered every one, because I think if you're reaching out to me, it may take me a minute to get back to you, but I will do my best to answer and give you a suggestion or a recommendation as best I can. I can't give medical advice per se, but perhaps I can direct you to where to find what you're looking for. So I try to make myself as reachable as I possibly can without going crazy, because I do have my dance life that I have to attend to, work-life balance, homeostasis, you're right, sympathetic, parasympathetic. We need to stay in balance.
Yeah. Michelle, thank you so much for such a wonderful episode about such an important topic. And who knows, I hope to see you again on the show someday. Take care.
Thank you, Marina. On the dance floor.